Crystal, 2 club sandwiches for table number 3. Hearing Grace, I set the plates on the tray. I turned to her and nodded as she slipped out of the kitchen. I stared at the tray and sighed. A month, and my life had been turned inside out. That day at the hospital, I didn't just lose my mother. I lost my smile. My joy, everything. The storm was raging. I ran out of the hospital and kept running down the road. Tears blurred my vision. I wanted to scream, to sob, but Isaac's bulky men thundered after me, shouting and cursing. I didn't have time to care. All I knew was, run for my life. The weather made everything worse. I was exhausted, cornered at an alley when a door flew open. A hand yanked me inside, the door slamming shut behind me. That's how I met Grace. She's not much older, mid-20s. I was wary of everyone by then, every stranger a threat. But Grace said nothing. She hid me, sent those men away with a calm face and a steady voice. After that, I blacked out. When I woke, the room smelled like fresh bread and coffee. Grace gave me a place to stay. No questions, no price. It felt unreal, like fate had finally spared me a little kindness. A few days later, I cried when Cassie spoke to me again. Then I learned the truth. Isaac had been slipping pills into my meals to suppress my wolf. That's why I couldn't hear Cassie. That's why she was so weak. With Cassie and Grace pushing me forward, I started helping in Grace's restaurant. I felt alive again. Maybe Mom was blessing me from above, guiding me to a real friend. Things were getting better, and I swore I'd fight for my future. I lifted the tray to head out. Then the room tilted. My head spun hard. I closed my eyes, hoping it would pass, but my strength fled. Darkness rolled over me like smoke, and I hit the floor. The last thing I heard was Grace screaming my name. Yet. When I opened my eyes, a white ceiling stared back. Crystal, you're awake. I turned my head. Grace stood beside my bed, a doctor at her side. Where am I? At the hospital, Grace said softly. I found you unconscious in the kitchen. I got scared, so I brought you here. She was smiling, but her eyes were tight with worry. I was just feeling weak. You didn't have to spend money on me again. Let's go home. I tried to sit up. The doctor's hand stopped me. Miss Crystal, I can't discharge you. The way you're taking care of your body is putting both of your lives in danger. Both? My brows knit. Both. What are you talking about, doctor? I know my body, I'm fine. The doctor glanced at Grace, who was watching me like she had something stuck behind her teeth. Something she couldn't say. The doctor sighed. It's your body, your life. I won't hide it from you, Miss Crystal. Congratulations. You're pregnant. Silence fell. Ice cold. Absolute. Doubly. What? Yes. You're only in your first month, but the first trimester is crucial. You must take care of yourself. For your baby. Rest now. I'll send food. She left. I didn't move. My body felt frozen around a single heartbeat. I'm pregnant? My hand drifted to my belly, trembling. Crystal, don't think too much. You need rest, Grace murmured. I looked at her. She looked back, worried deep in her face. She didn't know what had happened a month ago, what I'd run from. Baby. The word fell out of me. Shh. You can decide after you're better, she said. If you want to keep the baby, I'll support you. If you don't, I'll still support you. It's your choice. I stared at her blankly. I was pregnant. Pregnant with a stranger's child. Someone I didn't know. Someone I never even saw. If I kept the baby, could I give this child a good life? I was already running from the world. Would my baby have to run with me because of my past? Grace pulled me into a hug. Don't think about it now. Rest. We'll go somewhere quiet, take a little vacation. You can decide calmly there. This is your life, your future. A tear slipped free. She was right. This choice would shape everything. Thank you, I whispered. Thank you for being here. I owe you so much. You don't, she said. I'm here always. They made me eat doctor's orders, Grace's stubbornness. Then Grace went home to grab some clothes. The doctor wanted to keep me overnight. Now I lay in the dim room, staring at the ceiling. What do I do? My palms settled on my belly. There was a tiny life breathing through me, but Isaac was still out there. For weeks, I'd kept to the kitchen to avoid trouble. If he learned about my baby, both of us would be in danger. But is abortion the answer? I know this baby came from a dark night, a terrible mistake. But how do I end the life of the only being I can call family? I turned over again and again, restless. I didn't want to hurt my baby. I wanted to keep it safe. But Isaac's wrath, I couldn't decide. I needed air. I slipped out into the corridor and drifted toward a giant window near the hospital chapel. Down in the garden, a few children played, their laughter floating up faintly. Without thinking, I smiled and stroked my belly. If I kept my baby in 2 or 3 years, they could play like that too. But can I protect my child? The thought iced my smile. My heart and mind argued in a loop. I sighed, helpless, when 2 men's voices reached me, low and careful. I'm a werewolf. My ears pick up what humans miss. But Alpha, the pack is waiting for their Luna. Even the council urges you to have an heir soon to uphold the Alpha laws, one said. A deeper voice answered, rough and impatient. My wolf won't cooperate to find our mate. We haven't found her. Without a mate, where am I supposed to give them an heir? I blinked. Alpha? Which pack? They kept talking. That's why Alpha. I suggested surrogacy, but that's bullshit, the second man snapped, cold and lethal. None of those she-wolves are capable of carrying my heir. Silence pulsed. Yes, Alpha Ramos, the first man said carefully. I know it sounds strange, but your sperm can't pair with any of the eggs from the she-wolves I found. The doctor tried many times, but it didn't work. My breath hitched. I clapped a hand over my mouth. Alpha Ramos, the strongest, cruelest alpha alive. His name alone dries throats. Every werewolf knows him, and now I knew his darkest secret. Panic prickled. I needed to slip away unseen. If they realized I'd heard, they'd erase me. I exhaled slowly and turned to go fast. Quiet, my ankle twisted. A soft whimper escaped before I smothered it with my hand. Too late. 2 pairs of eyes snapped to me. I looked up straight into dark golden eyes. Fury burned there. His jaw flexed. His gaze dropped to my belly. Run. I pivoted. But a cold hand wrapped my wrist and spun me back. Those same golden eyes pinned me in place. My heart hammered so hard it hurt. The moment his skin touched mine, something flared under my ribs. Heat. Recognition. Familiar and rough, like I knew this touch from a dream. I bit my lower lip. His gaze cut to my belly again, sharp as a blade. Shit. Is he going to hurt my baby because I know his secret? Number, I won't let that happen. I swallowed, ready to apologize and bolt, when his roar shook the hall. Puppies. Mine. I've been going nuts these last few months, pulled thin by the demands of my pack and my family. I never planned on taking another mate. I can handle my throne and my wolves just fine. But this heir of the alpha rule, at 30, it's a pounding headache. The rule book is clear. I must have an heir. I thought about choosing a she-wolf from my pack, but most of them are useless, wars who grind their asses on my lap, desperate to be chosen. I won't have a Luna like that. So I took my beta suggestion and tried the surrogacy route. And damn it, it failed again. I was on the verge of a rampage when the news hit. Then a scent cut through the fury wild, intoxicating, like lightning in the rain. My head snapped toward it. My feet moved before I could think. I caught the woman and turned her toward me. And for the first time in my life, something strange surged through my veins. Recognition, like I knew her. Like she was a piece of me I'd lost and suddenly found. What the hell? I am the alpha, the others fear. The one every she-wolf whispers about wanting. But after my first mate died that night, I never even thought of keeping a woman by my side. And yet, I was being pulled toward this woman, as if something in her was calling me to hold her. I followed the scent down, to her belly. My gaze locked, and my pulse thundered. Pups, mine, I growled. She blinked, wide-eyed. What? What? She looked at me like she had no idea who I was, no idea what I meant. Rage flared hot. I grabbed her by the neck and slammed her against the wall. You dare pretend? You think you can run after stealing from me? My bloodline, my babies. She wasn't one of my surrogates. I'd seen their photos. This face was never on any list. Debala. What are you saying, Alpha? Is she one of our surrogates? Hanson's voice cut in tight with confusion. Her face reddened under my grip as I tightened, pressure building under my fingers. I wanted to squeeze until she stopped fighting, stopped lying. I'm not a surrogate. You must be mistaken. Please, let me go. Her voice broke, breath scraping the edge of a sob. Kill her, and the pups die too. Are you insane? My wolf. Alex roared in my head. I dragged my gaze back to her womb. The pull was undeniable. My pups were there. I released her. She crumpled to the floor, gasping. One hand braced on the wall, the other trembling against her throat. It didn't cool the hatred burning behind my eyes. I despise desperate women who want nothing but my name. She lifted her head slowly, fear pooling in her eyes, and then I saw it, worse than anything, an omega. A mere omega is carrying my babies. How dare you? I snarled. She looked so damn innocent, it made me want to break something. Cunning little omega, I think you've misunderstood, Alpha. She coughed, voice shaking. I'm not a surrogate, and how would I be pregnant with your baby? You doubting my abilities? I crouched and gripped her chin, forcing her to meet my gaze. I'm an alpha. I can smell my pups inside your womb. The last word came out a roar. She flinched, shivering, eyes wide with terror. Alphas aren't just strong, we're power and instinct sharpened to a blade. The stronger the alpha, the truer the senses. One breath of her scent was enough. She was running with my pups. She fell silent for a few seconds, then tried again, voice barely steady. Please, at least let me explore. Shut up. I cut her off with a snap. I know omegas like you, desperate to get in an alpha's sightline. Don't even dream of running. I'll make you regret daring to steal from me. I glanced at Hanson, still staring like the world had tilted. Block this news, I'll handle it. All right, Alpha. But how will you? I ignored him. I hauled the omega up by the elbow. Her hand pawed at my grip small, shaking, useless. Where are you taking me? Leave me, she cried. I didn't give a damn. She dared to stand in front of me. With my pups inside her, I dragged her into my private room and pushed her onto the king-sized bed. Hanson slipped in behind us and locked the door. Not a word leaves this room. Now tell me, I said, voice cold. How did you steal from me, my bloodline? How did you trap my pups? How many times do I have to say I'm not a surrogate? Her voice rose for the first time, eyes locking on mine. You won't believe me even if I bash my head against the wall. A thief with a high tone. I clenched my jaw. Shut your mouth. I am your alpha. You don't raise your voice to me unless you want me to bury you under my feet. She clamped her lips shut, but that stubborn stare stayed. Like I was the one in the wrong. My wolf paced. Restless. Will you fucking ask her to shift? Or do you want me to take over? Alex wasn't easygoing, dominant, impatient. He wanted to see if her wolf was strong enough to carry our pups. Shift, I ordered, dropping onto the couch. Show me your wolf. She looked away. My eyes narrowed. I gave you an order, little Omega. I can't shift. Silence punched through the room. Heat roared back into my veins. How dare you be pregnant with my pups when you're an Omega who can't even shift? I surged to my feet, fists ready. The urge to grab her throat again burned hot. My heir can't come from an Omega's belly. The council will never accept her. They'll never accept the child, especially with me running for Alpha King. Please, don't kill my child. She wrapped her arms around her womb, as if she could shield the baby with her body. I swear I'll never come in front of you again. I won't tell anyone. I'll leave. I'll go far away. Just please don't hurt the baby. My jaw locked. I stared at her, at the way she held our pups, and swallowed the snarl rising in my chest. A knock sounded. "It's your private doctor on the line," Hanson said. I yanked the door open. He held the phone out, speaker on. "Sorry to bother you, Alpha." Nathan's voice came thin over the line. "Just speak." A weary sigh. "I'm sorry, Alpha, but the latest surrogacy test failed as well. Your Alpha bloodline is so strong that the other she-wolves' eggs can't match it." For a beat, everything stilled, and then it hit like fate had decided to spit in my face all over again. I was stunned after hearing about his private doctor. My eyes dropped to my belly, and those words kept circling my mind. His Alpha bloodline is so overpowering that none of the surrogate tests worked. So then, how am I pregnant with his babies? So no one can bear my child. His tone turned mocking. Before I could cover my ears from more secrets, his cold gaze snapped back to me, and he hung up the phones. Now, the real point, where were you on the 8th of last month? His voice froze the air. My eyes widened, and then it hit me. He was the man from that night. I had never been with anyone else. Not since that overbearing stranger in the wrong room. I swallowed, scrambling for an excuse, when his voice cracked across the room, cold and lethal. "Don't you dare lie. Fuck. I'm doomed. If I tell the truth, I don't know what he'll do to me, but if I lie, I'm sure I'll die." Gulping hard, I said, "At the 7-star hotel on Northern Street." Silence fell thick and punishing. Before he asked, "So you were sent by whom?" My brows knit as I met his hate-filled stare. "What?" he sneered. "Don't act like a white lotus. Tell me, what great enemy of mine sent you? Any rogue, or any—" "I was not sent by anyone," I snapped, heat flooding my cheeks. "I walked into your room by mistake, and that night was a mistake." He clenched his jaw. "Do you think I'll believe you? I get plenty of wolves, like you trying to climb into my bed. They either want my heart or my life, and you must feel lucky. You actually managed to carry my pups." His sarcasm made my skin crawl. Alpha Ramos. I'd heard the name powerful, ruthless, narcissistic. "Don't even think I'll allow you to roam around with my pups inside you," he said, voice flat. "Since you're pregnant with my babies, you will move into my house until you give birth to my pups." My body went numb. His words sounded simple, but I knew exactly what he meant. He wanted to cage me in his mansion, then take my baby away. "No, I won't go anywhere with you. You have no right to drag me, and my baby anywhere," I cried, breath catching, as I wrapped my arms around my bellies. If I'd had 100 doubts before, now I knew what I wanted. I will not give up on my child. I would die before I let go of the last piece of happiness I have. "I don't have any relationship with you. Didn't you say I'm not capable of carrying the alpha heir? Then leave me alone." Tears blurred my vision, but my voice came out cold. His face darkened as he stepped closer. One step, then another. "You think you have the right to question me." Number I knew I didn't. But I had to keep fighting if I wanted to protect my child from this monster. "I don't," I said, lifting my chin. "But are you behaving like an alpha should? An alpha should be a symbol of fairness, not a tyrant." I don't know where the courage came from, but I went for his pride. His eyes flared. He closed the distance and his hand clamped around my neck again. His voice was a dead cold howl. "So you know what a real alpha should do. You should also know an alpha doesn't let a thief run off with his pups. If you dare run again, I will hunt you down anywhere." Right, I should have known. This tyrant would never listen. But I couldn't be caged. I had to run, at any cost. The door opened. His beta slipped in with a stack of papers. "Alpha, I got everything you asked for. The tyrant took them." scanning page after page. A slow, sarcastic smirk pulled at his lips. Unwanted pack member. Rejected mate. Ran away from the pack. And lastly, a whore for an old man. I was not a whore, I shouted, cutting him off, shame and fury burning through me. I had my reasons, he scoffed. I don't care what you were or weren't. Do you really think you're fit to protect my child when you've got 100 problems chasing you down? My mouth snapped shut. Isaac would never stop. His men had already come to Grace's restaurant twice with my picture. Grace covered for me, smartly, but it wouldn't be long before they saw through her lies. Why so quiet now? The tyrant murmured. Tell me, are you capable of giving birth to my babies and protecting them? His words punched straight through me. Could I protect my child from my past? Could I give them a better life than mine? Doubt clawed at my throat. I had no answer. Looks like you're still not ready, he said softly. Now, what about this girl, Grace? Leave her alone. It's none of her business. I stood so fast, the chair scraped. Grace took me in when I had nothing. I wouldn't let her pay for my mistakes. Wiping my tears, I steadied my voice. I'm ready to go with you, but you have to promise me. You will not touch Grace or her restaurant. His victorious smile told me everything. The moment I surrendered, he won, and my new nightmare began to take shape. Can't I just die? Staring up at the sky, I wondered what was happening to me, to my life. How did I end up as the unwanted soul of the entire world? I caressed my belly, forcing myself to think positive. At least my babies will get the life they deserve. I'm alone in the car, heading to Alpha Ramos's house. I guess he's disgusted by my presence, but I'm glad he isn't with me. The tyrant separated me from Grace. I didn't even get to say goodbye face to face. I still remember how Alpha Ramos mocked me before he left. You can see her for your entire life after giving birth to my pups. Heartless bastard. Cursing him calmed me a little, but I was still curious. Am I really carrying more than one baby? He's an alpha stronger than me. He kept saying pups. He can't be wrong, can he? I was so lost in my thoughts. I didn't notice the car stopping until I looked up at a mansion so grand it swallowed my breath. Blinking hard, I took in its size. A palace. My mouth fell open. The driver opened the door, and I scrambled to close my lips as I stepped out. Modern lines with touches of royalty. Somehow both sleek and regal. The entrance gate was so far away I couldn't even see it from here. The Alpha had to attend an important meeting, so I'll lead you to your room first, miss. I turned. It was the same man who'd been with Alpha Ramos at the hospital, his beta, I guessed. I nodded and followed, palms slick with sweat. I didn't know how they'd treat me here. Would the pack abuse me? Lock me in a basement? Inside, workers moved quietly, focused on their tasks. No one dared stare. For a second, I saw my old self serving the Alpha and his family, keeping my head down. Rosalie, is the guest room ready? The beta asked an older woman. She nodded and guided us down the hall. Each step felt like I was being led to a new cage. I forced a sad smile as I walked into the room. And froze. It was huge. A king-size bed centered the space. A beautiful balcony glowed with light. A plush couch waited near the window. The bathroom was set apart, clean lines and quiet luxury. 3 times larger than the room the old tycoon had arranged for me. Miss Roger, this is your room from today onward. And this is Rosalie, your personal cook. If you want anything, call her or tell her. I nodded. The beta left me to rest. But could I really rest here? I wandered to the bed. Fresh flowers sat on the bedside table, their scent soft and clean. The balcony had a swing gentle, inviting. Looks like your daddy cares about you too. A lot, I whispered, stroking my womb. He might be a tyrant, but he knew what the pups needed. Don't think it's for you. It's just for his babies. My wolf's voice iced over my smile cruel. But true, the realization hit hard, and I laughed at myself. I know I can never fit into his perfect world. But will he ever accept M? Don't dream so high, Crystal. Reality will break your heart again. Just like Luke did, Cassie's words shut me up. And this time, I felt her sadness too. My chest tightened. I had to brush it off. I needed to stay happy and healthy for my babies. With a long sigh, I stepped onto the balcony and spotted the garden below. Warm sunlight touched my face, and a bright smile slipped out. I kicked off my shoes. Barefoot felt like freedom. I wandered through the garden, no one in sight. Silence pooled around me, calm, steady, until something caught my eye. I broke into a run. Squatting down, I gasped. The most beautiful flower I'd ever seen. A small plant with broad pink blooms, delicate, radiant. I'd never seen anything like it. It's beautiful, Cassie murmured. I nodded, fingertips brushing a petal, when someone grabbed my arms, yanked me up, and spun me around. How dare you roam around here and touch these rare plants with your filthy hands? A middle-aged woman glared at me, fury blazing in her eyes. I stared back stunned. I wasn't ready for this. She was beautiful, and she looked like the angry female version of Ramos. What are you staring at? Wasn't stealing my son's bloodline and getting yourself pregnant with his heir enough for you? Now, you're treating this mansion like it's yours. She hissed the words with a mocking smile, and then I knew she was his mother. And she hated me too. I clamped my mouth shut and turned to go, not wanting to provoke her. But she jerked me back, fingers biting into my arm. How dare you show me your back? Did you forget you're a mere Omega, not the Luna of my son? Her words were knives, but I kept my voice steady. I'm sorry for coming out. I'll stay in the room, just like you said, she sneered. You'd better. I don't want you causing trouble for my son on the night of the Luna selection ceremony. I blinked. A Luna now? While I'm pregnant with his pups. What? Why do you look surprised? She scoffed. Did you think he'd make you his Luna just because you're carrying his babies? Don't even dream of that nonsense. His Luna will be a high-ranking she-wolf who deserves him, unlike a wolfless Omega like you. She released my arm with one last glare. Don't you dare step out, or show this face to my son. He will have his Luna in 3 days. How is she now? I asked Hanson. She looks fine, but the doctor suggested we stop her from staying depressed, he said shortly. Her body's getting weak. She's not eating anything, just crying. My jaw clenched. This Omega was going to drive me nuts. She was weakening her body, and my pups. Don't listen to her, make sure she eats, or tell her that if I come there, I'll make her eat the entire kitchen, I said coldly, then cut the mind link. I exhaled angry, remembering how this annoying Omega had crashed into my life in a blink. I never imagined an Omega would carry my babies, let alone that I'd let her live in one of my private mansions. I'm an alpha, the most feared alpha, and yet a weak Omega is carrying my heir, while the council and the pack will never accept it. Ironically, she's my only choice now. For the last few years, Hanson brought me plenty of she-wolves above warrior level to match my sperm. Every test failed pathetically, leaving me furious and staring down the very real possibility I might not have an heir. That night at the hotel, I was drunk. The council meeting had dragged, and they brought up the same damn topic again. I hate being required to do anything. I'm born to rule. I took Josh's advice and went for drinks. Old rules, old habits, he arranged a girl. And that night, I don't know what got into me. Or my wolf. We couldn't stop devouring her. For the first time in my life, I went for a second round, and then kept going until she passed out. In the morning, I didn't even see her face. The blanket was over her head. I went to the washroom, and by the time I came out, she was gone. It surprised me, sure, but I didn't go looking. Josh knows I don't like trouble. He always arranges an infertile Omega. After that, I tried another test with another warrior she-wolf failed. Again, I was on the edge when I smelled something. Strange, unique, pleasurable, unknown. And the moment I felt my babies inside her, I went still stunned and furious. A wolfless Omega carrying my pups. A shame. I wanted to punish her for daring to steal my seed, until I saw the search footage. She'd gone into my room by mistake. Thanks to that bloody agent's plan, she'd accidentally become my surrogate. I don't like her or want to see her, but I'm glad she's not one of those fame-chasing leeches who love rubbing their plastic curves on my body. She looks weak and timid beside me, but she doesn't act weak. She speaks while looking me in the eye, and she's even shouted in my face. Are you really thinking about her? Not bad? First time you're thinking about a girl in Omega, no less. Alex, my wolf sneered inside. I'm not thinking about her. I'm thinking about my pups in her, I snapped. He scoffed. Like I'd cracked a joke. I let out a breath and got back to work. The last 2 days I've been running after her, because she's my last option. I have to focus. I'm not only the alpha, I'm the CEO of the biggest company in the city. I worked late. Just as I was about to leave, Josh called. Where are you? I'm at the Florida club come soon. I was about to say yes. Then Hanson's words resurfaced. Crystal was sick. I'd told Hanson to stay with her, but I needed to make sure my pups were fine. I'm busy today. I cut the call and returned to my mansion. She still hasn't eaten. What the hell are you doing? Didn't I tell you to make sure she has her food on time? I snapped when Hanson and Rosalie told me. Crystal still hadn't had anything? I'm sorry, Alpha. She fell asleep, so I didn't wake her, Rosalie said. Heat flared in my chest. That damn woman didn't even consider she's carrying my babies. Prepare the food, I ordered. Rosalie rushed to the kitchen. I turned to Hanson. What else happened today? Alpha, your mother came to see Miss Roger. They talked for a while in the garden. After that, Miss Roger locked herself in, and she developed a fever. I wasn't surprised. I know my mother. I know exactly what she'd say. And she might not be wrong, but Crystal is weak. It's not right to push her when she's pregnant with my babies. Next time, call me the moment she comes here. I headed for Crystal's room. I didn't bother knocking. I pushed the door open and stopped. She was asleep, breathing softly. I'd been walking fast loud. I stilled. Quietly, I moved to the bed, careful not to make a sound. I sat on the edge. I'd come to wake her so she'd eat. But the moment I saw her face, I forgot. She looked peaceful, perfect, not a single flaw. A smile tugged at my mouth before I noticed a few strands of hair across her cheek. I brushed her hair back, soft silken, and a rosy scent unfurled, filling my lungs with a pleasure I couldn't name. Yesterday, I hadn't had the time or the mind to look at her. She's pretty in a way I've never seen small face. Little rosy cheeks, a pointed nose, and perfect kissable red lips. Kissable lips, Alex cut in, freezing my smile. I ignored him and looked away. My pups called to me. I placed my palm over her belly gentle. I could feel them. More than one. I knew it. I felt them better than their mother. Mother? Alex snorted, laughing. I shut him out. Even if she leaves after giving birth, she's still their mother. I just hope my pups won't be like her, weak and timid. Let them be like me. Strong, powerful. They can look like her though, beautiful, graceful. And no PL. Please, my babies, she murmured, twisting. Her forehead beaded with sweat. She shifted, head tossing. Don't take my babies. No, her hands flailed. Fear punched through me that her wild movements might harm my pups. I caught her wrists at once. Her hands were so soft, my heart skipped a beat. As I tightened my hold, her lashes fluttered. Her eyes opened, locking on mine. I couldn't look away. Those eyes, like magnets. Alpha, she whispered. So, he's causing trouble again. Didn't I tell you to destroy his rogues? Ramos asked, voice cold. The one man who never failed to anger him. Half of his rogues are under us now, Hanson said at once. But he's still causing trouble with other alpha packs. Should I kill him? Ramos stayed silent for a couple of seconds. Alpha, Alpha. A breathless call echoed from the stairs. Both men turned as Ava, the newly appointed maid for Crystal, came, running like she was being chased, eyes wide with panic. She stopped in front of Ramos, gulping air so fast she could barely speak. Alpha, that man baby. Just those last 2 words were enough. Ramos bolted for Crystal's room at lightning speed. He burst through the door and found her on the couch, panicked, tearful, her dress soaked dark at her thighs. The metallic scent hit him. Crystal felt him before she saw him. She turned toward the door and sobbed harder. Ramos, babies. He crossed the room in a heartbeat and gathered her into his arms. Babies. Am I going to lose them too? Her voice was threaded with raw pain, fear that clawed at his chest, because he couldn't lose his pups, not now. She trembled against him, and he tightened his hold. Calm down. Nothing will happen to them. I promise you. They're fine. I can feel them. Trust me. I won't let anything happen to them. They've got my blood, and it's stronger than anything. Just breathe. Stop crying, now. It sounded like an order, but his tone rarely was gentle. The words washed over her like a sedative. Even his fearsome aura softened into something warm, a scent that made her want to cling tighter. Something rose in her throat, another sob, another plea. But before she could think, a startled gasp escaped as the ground dropped away. Ramos had swept her into his arms. Get the car ready for the hospital right now. He barked at Hansen, then strode out with Crystal held close. Is it hurting anywhere? Ramos asked in the car. He refused to set her down, no matter how many times she asked. I can't feel any pain, but I can't feel them, so I don't know. Crystal pressed both hands to her belly. Ramos set his palm over hers, and she stared up at him, startled. They're doing well. I can feel them, he murmured, meeting her gaze. Silence fell alive with a hum neither of them could ignore. The touch lit something along their veins, their wolves stirring, restless and eager. They told themselves it was because of the babies, yet neither could look away. Alpha, we're here. Hansen's voice broke the spell. Ramos didn't let her walk. He carried her out, straight to the private VVIP elevator from the parking lot. At the top floor, a team of doctors waited, stiff with shock at the sight of the most ruthless man in the country, a woman in his arms, rage still simmering in his eyes. Where is the room? Check on her. Ramos snapped. Why? Yes. Nurses, hurry. The head doctor stammered, reaching for a stretcher. I said, where is the room? Ramos roared. This way. The doctors scrambled, leading them into the exam room. 2 doctors moved in immediately, machines rolling, hands steady. Ramos stood behind them, a shadow that watched everything. Doctor, are my babies doing well? They're fine, right? Crystal asked, voice trembling. They're absolutely fine. Don't worry, the doctor said gently. I think you tired yourself out. Wait, I'll let you hear their heartbeats. Crystal's eyes brightened. So soon. I can hear them now. Alpha blood is different, the doctor explained. Much more powerful than most imagine. Crystal glanced toward Ramos. He gave nothing away, as if he already knew. Cold gel touched her skin. She stared at the screen, breath tight, afraid to blink and miss a single second. Then the room filled with the rapid, tiny thrum of life. Congratulations, the doctor smiled. It's triplets. Crystal's hands flew to her mouth as tears spilled over. On the screen, her babies were no bigger than peas, 3 small miracles. They're so beautiful, Crystal. You're a great mother, Cassie whispered inside her. Crystal turned, instinct more than thought, and caught the faint sheen in Ramos's eyes before his expression shuttered closed again. That's all for today, the doctor said softly. For now, they're healthy and growing well, but your body is under strain. You must stay happy, nourished, and calm if you want a safe birth. Crystal nodded. When they were ready to leave, she stood before Ramos could lift her again. Being that close to him, it did strange things to her. She couldn't repeat the same mistake. They reached the private lift. What a lucky day, a voice drawled behind them, laced with sarcasm. I get to see the greatest alpha today. They stopped and turned. The man wasn't old, but not so young either, handsome in a cold, vicious way that made Crystal's skin crawl. She ducked behind Ramos without thinking. Even with a glance, Liam's eyes gleamed. She wore no makeup, yet her face glowed, moonlit tempting, and possessive hunger sharpened his gaze. Ramos felt it. Rage flared. He shifted, completely blocking her from view. Liam chuckled. "Why hide such beauty from us, Alpha? Let us smell her too." He took one step closer, then stilled. His nostrils flared, recognition flashed. "If you don't want me to kill you and bury you here, get lost, rogue Alpha Liam," Ramos warned, voice low and lethal. Liam's lips curved in a mocking smirk. "How come? I can smell the mighty Alpha on her." Jealousy edged his tone. In his mind, Ramos didn't deserve anything beautiful or powerful. Ramos's eyes darkened, but before he could speak, a thought seemed to slam into Liam. "Wait a moment. Don't tell me. You're mated to this Omega. She is just my slave." The moment Crystal heard Ramos, her heart shattered all over again. She looked at him in silence, a bitter smile curling at her lips. Well, demoted, from breeder to slave. But Liam didn't buy it, he scoffed. "So now your slave also smells like you, just like all your whores smell like you," Ramos shot back. Liam's glare sharpened, but Ramos didn't slow. "Instead of worrying about my slave, watch your own business. This is my territory. Leave before I change my mind." The words landed like a slap. Fury rose in Liam. He wanted to answer with a fist and blood. Then his beta's voice slid into his mind, urgent. He went quiet for a couple of seconds, studying Ramos, who was already turning away. A playful smirk tugged at Liam's mouth. "Don't think I'm done with you, Ramos. Soon I'll see you again." And this time, with a surprise. He flicked a look at Crystal behind Ramos and added a little too smooth. "I'll meet you too, little slave of Alpha Ramos." Liam left. Crystal's skin crawled at his flirtation. She noticed Ramos's hands had been clenched for a long while. He acted like Liam didn't affect him, but "Who is he?" she asked, the words slipping out before she could catch them. Ramos rolled his eyes. "You don't need to know everyone, but he knows me." His glare turned lethal. Hansen swallowed hard. At this rate, how long could Crystal survive next to this Alpha? The way she kept poking him, Hansen worried she'd end up dead, or just vanish. "Also, I don't think he likes you," Crystal added, anxious. "What if he hurts my babies?" "He won't. He doesn't have the guts to touch my babies." "Mind your language in front of my babies," she snapped, fierce as a lioness. Hansen had to bite back a laugh. Ramos dragged in a breath, fighting down his temper. "He wanted to annoy me, and now you've joined the list. Don't worry, he's not interested in an Omega like you. Get in the car." Crystal scoffed and slid in. "Omega like her? What the hell was that supposed to mean?" "Don't forget, you're just an Omega who can't shift," Ramos said as he got in beside her, as if he'd reached into her head and taken the thought out. "Don't underestimate a mother. A mother can do anything for her children." Her glare held steady, his eyes locked on hers. That strange pull washed over her again, his gaze like a vortex, ready to swallow her if she wasn't careful. Heat flared low as their eyes held too long. "Damn. Don't be stupid again, Crystal." She forced herself to look away. "It's just because of the pups inside you. You're not mates, and he called you slave." She hugged herself and stared out the window, but her mind kept circling back to the encounter. Ever since Liam's creepy smile, unease had been gnawing at her. "Are you damn well thinking about another man now?" Ramos's roar snapped through the car. Crystal jerked. Could he read her mind? How? And why should he be angry even if she did think about someone else? She was his breeder, but that didn't mean she belonged to him. "Listen." She cleared her throat, trying to tamp down her irritation. "I'm not interested in your business, but that man, it felt like he was threatening me. I need to understand what's going on so I can protect my babies." Ramos went silent. "And I am not your slave, Mr. Alpha," she added, voice cold. "I agreed to live in your house to save my friend. That does not mean I agreed to be your slave." The word hit an old bruise. Back in her original pack, they'd introduced her to everyone as a slave. She had run, left everything behind, and now the label was trying to catch her again. She would not wear it. Her eyes went cold and damp. Ramos's face stayed expressionless, which only made it worse. A lone tear slipped free. She wiped it fast. She wouldn't look pathetic in front of this ruthless alpha. If you really care about your pups, then you shouldn't make us feel threatened. She didn't wait for a reply. Crystal opened the door and stepped out, leaving Ramos staring. Her words numbed him. For the first time, someone told him they felt threatened by him. Here, in his own kingdom, where everyone believed in him without hesitation. "Crystal, stop," he called, turning toward the stairs. "He still thinks I'm his slave expected to obey?" Crystal scoffed and hurried her steps. Ramos started after her. Hansen and Rosalie exchanged a look. Startled Alpha Ramos, chasing like a husband, coaxing his furious wife. "Crystal, stop and listen to me," he called again, almost a plea. She ignored him. He was her alpha. But that didn't mean he owned her. She reached her room and shoved the door, ready to slam it shut. Ramos wedged his boot in the gap, irritation sparking, and pushed through. "What the hell do you want now?" she snapped. "Didn't I say I'm not interested in your business? Leave me alone." She tried to close the door again, but Ramos didn't give her the chance. He stepped in, shut it behind him, and caged her there. His body a wall, the wood at her back. "Remember, I am your alpha," he roared. She stared him down, unblinking, stubborn, their eyes locked. 2 inches of charged air between them. Breath mingled. The room heated. Something was wrong, or right in a way that scared her. His eyes held hers like a spell, and she couldn't look away. "Trust me," he whispered. "No one can ever hurt my pups. And a beat?" They were too close. "I will protect the 4 of you." His words were like magic. Crystal felt her legs go numb. Even where his hands held her arms, heat spread, turning her body hot and god-needy for more of his touch. "What the fuck is happening to me, Cassie? His touch is driving me crazy," she asked her wolf. Her lips trembled, hungry for something she shouldn't even think about. Ramos stared into her eyes as if he could see her soul. He felt it too. His thumb glided over her arm, slow and careful. Every time his skin met hers, heat surged through his veins. "What is happening to me, Alex?" Ramos asked his wolf. "I don't know either," Alex paced in his head. "There's something about her that pulls at us, but I can't tell what." Ramos's gaze dropped to Crystal's belly. So Alex meant the pups were the pull. The moment his eyes dipped, Crystal's scattered mind snapped back into place. What was she expecting? He couldn't be her mate. The magic had to come from the pups she carried for him. It had to be that. She felt this because her pups loved their father. "We're not mates, Alpha. No need to be so close." Crystal pushed him back and walked toward the balcony. Her face burned, and she refused to let him see her flush from a few touches. "Mates," Ramos murmured, resentment darkening his tone. So she was still thinking of her ex-mate while carrying his pups. What did she think he was? Without a second thought, he caught her by the arm and turned her to face him. The move was so sudden she stumbled into his chest. Their eyes flew wide and locked. Heat rushed through them again. Crystal's knees went weak. Thank God his hand was on her waist, or the cold floor would have met her ass. He'd meant to reprimand her. But when he met those mesmerizing eyes, his words shifted. "If you ask, I can help you take revenge on your ex-mate." Crystal blinked twice. A cruel alpha offering help for no reason. That was not his style. She studied him for a few beats, then leaned in to search his eyes more closely. Her face hovered 3 inches from his. Ramos tightened his grip on her waist, only for her to leave him speechless. "Are you drunk, Alpha?" "What?" His voice jumped as he pushed her away. This woman, unbelievable. "Then why are you suddenly being kind? Why help me?" Her calm, questioning gaze shut his mouth. "I just don't want your tangled emotions hurting the health of my pups." The words cut for a second. She'd been touched by the offer now, gone. "No need. Who knows what you'll demand as payment later?" She shot him a sidelong glance. "Maybe you'll ask me to be your actual slave. So no, let it be. This woman, Ramos clenched his fist. Did she even know what she'd just turned down? He was the most powerful alpha strong enough to crush any pack. A candidate for Alpha King, answering to no one. People lined up in long queues to beg for his help. He rarely offered it, especially to an Omega, and she refused. Was she insane? Do you think you can go against an alpha with that pea-sized hand of yours? His mockery snapped through the air. Crystal bit back her reply, and he didn't stop. Let alone that you've got a furious agent on your trail. If you weren't carrying my babies, do you really think anyone but me would bother with your mess? Arrogant. But she knew better than anyone that once she left this mansion, her enemies would find her. Why so quiet now? Still don't need my help, Ramos asked, a proud smile tugging at his mouth as he waited for her to yield. Crystal turned slowly to face him. That smug smile pierced her nerve, and the words came hot. I know I'm weak, but I'll never pay with my freedom and happiness just to make someone else do my revenge. Yes, you're a strong alpha. You can make anyone beg at your feet in a minute, but that doesn't mean you can win my soul. Not wise to spit fire at a powerful alpha. She knew that, but she couldn't stop. She was done being mocked as a pathetic Omega. Sure, she hadn't been born into a powerful family, but that didn't mean she had to rely on others to survive. Fate hadn't shown her mercy. Still, she survived. Her determined gaze stunned Ramos. Power flickered in those beautiful eyes, alongside sorrow, tucked deep. Before he could speak, Crystal turned away. Now, if you don't mind, please leave my room. I want to rest. First time you failed, and it won't be the last, Alex snickered. Ramos slammed the door on him in his mind. He cleared his throat. Take care of my pups, carefully. Crystal chuckled. They're my babies too, I know what to do. Ramos clenched his fist, shot her a hard look, and walked out. The door clicked shut. Crystal exhaled long and shaky, and sank onto the mattress. Ramos stalked toward his study in the other corner. Fury simmering, Hansen fell in behind him. Ramos flung his blazer onto the couch and Hansen swallowed. Bad time to disturb the alpha. Someone unlucky was about to suffer. Ramos dropped into his chair, eyes closed. He loosened his tie. Crystal's shining eyes rose in his mind. Damn it! How could she be so stubborn? Was she questioning his strength, his power? His palm cracked against the desk. Hansen flinched and bent at once, ready for orders. Get me everything on Crystal's ex-mate.